Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to go over how often to apply for a new credit card. Recently I was talking to someone telling them about how I have dozens of credit cards that I've gotten over the years, and it's allowed me to travel around the world in business class and stay at some of the coolest hotels. Now, when telling this person about all the cards that I've gotten, the person wanted to know how often should they apply for a new credit card. Now, I wish there was an easy answer for this question, but since different banks have different rules, and also depending on where you are in your credit card journey and determining whether or not you end up getting approved for a card, it's not as simple as me just telling you an exact number. But I'll say that there are different guidelines you can follow, and there's also some tricks if you really want to get yourself a lot of credit cards that you can end up doing, and I'll get to that at the end of the video. So first, if you happen to be brand new to credit cards, you happen to be getting your first credit card, then I wouldn't say you should go ahead and go get yourself 6 credit cards in a year. The odds of you getting approved for that is very unlikely. You're probably going to get denied for those cards. If you have no credit at all, banks are going to be fearful that if they loan you money, that you're going to run away with that money. So what they need to do is see that you're a responsible person. So typically you end up getting yourself a low line of credit to start off, and then this will allow you to improve your credit score. And when your credit score improves, banks will be able to know that you're a responsible person who they can loan money to. So usually what ends up happening is you're going to get your first credit card, and your first credit card you get for about a year. You'd want to keep it, and then after a year you're going to want to apply for your second credit card. I would typically look at a different bank if you can. So start off with something like Discover to be your first credit card, something like the Discover It card, and then move over to something like the Chase Freedom Unlimited card as your second card. Now, depending on where your credit score is at this point, it's going to determine how soon you should be getting another card. Because the thing about it is your credit score is built up of 5 different things. You have credit utilization, on-time payments. Now, if you're responsible, you can end up having a low utilization and also making all the on-time payments. These are the biggest factors of your credit score. So if you end up taking care of these, then you should actually have a decent credit score. Now, on-time payments is going to take time to show that you are responsible with consistent on-time payments. Also, on top of that, having credit history is going to take time. This ends up being average age of credit, and you want this credit to be longer. The longer you end up having your average age of credit, the better your credit score end up being. So if you end up applying for a bunch of credit cards and actually getting approved for them, then it's actually going to have your credit history be shorter, which is going to decrease your credit score. However, if you've been doing this for years and years, it typically won't affect it that much because you've had such a long credit history. The next 2 parts of your credit score is going to be credit mix and then new lines of credit. So credit mix means that it's actually good to have different lines of credit because it's actually going to improve your credit score over time. And then the other one's going to be new lines of credit. So the more new lines of credit you actually end up having, the worse your credit score end up being. Now, these 2 components of your credit score end up being a smaller percentage. However, they still can end up being important. So if you end up being new in your credit card journey and you end up getting a bunch of new lines of credit, it will end up affecting your credit score, at least in the short term. But after you end up getting your second credit card, if you wait about 4 to 6 months, you should be perfectly fine to get your next credit card. And then what I would say after that is usually wait somewhere about 3 months to apply for another credit card if you want to. Now, obviously getting credit cards can end up being super beneficial because you can end up racking up a bunch of points and miles from sign-up bonuses, and then also end up getting new categories and new benefits from different credit cards, which end up being very, very valuable. The thing is though, when you end up signing up for these new credit cards, you want to make sure you can end up hitting the minimum spend for these welcome offers. Because as I said, these can end up being incredibly lucrative. So you don't want to end up applying for something like the American Express Platinum card, but then not have the ability to end up hitting the $6,000 spend in the first 6 months to end up getting that awesome welcome offer. So this is the reason why for me, when I end up looking at getting myself a new card, I end up seeing what is required for that sign-up bonus. And then if I can end up hitting that minimum spend over that time, then it can end up making a lot of sense for me to end up getting that card. Now, if you can't, then it's not going to make a lot of sense because those welcome offers end up being so lucrative that if you end up missing out on them, then honestly, I don't even think it makes that much sense to even end up applying for the card. I would wait until you can actually end up hitting the welcome offer. And then once you can, apply for this card. And then after you end up hitting the minimum spend for the welcome offer, then you can start to begin to look for a new card to get. Now, a key thing to know that I said in the beginning was that banks have different rules. So Chase has its own rules, American Express has its own rules, and you have to know the rules of these banks to determine whether or not you're going to end up being approved for the card. Now, this isn't going to be guaranteed that you're going to end up getting approved, but you can end up giving yourself a much higher likelihood of actually getting approved when knowing these rules. So something like Chase's 524 rule, which means that you can only end up getting yourself 5 cards within the course of 24 months with any bank to actually end up being approved for the card, is going to end up determining whether or not it even makes sense to apply for a Chase credit card. So if you end up getting your first credit card, you wait 1 year, and then the next year you end up applying for 3 cards, and then the year after that you end up applying for another 3 cards, well then it doesn't make any sense to apply for a Chase credit card because since you end up getting yourself 6 cards over the course of 2 years, you're going to end up automatically being denied for a Chase credit card. So knowing these rules can end up being very, very important. What you always should do is look into the banks to see which rules they have and then how inquiry sensitive they are as well. Because some banks end up being quite inquiry sensitive when it comes to just new lines of credit or actually just having hard pulls put onto your account. But knowing the rules for banks is one of the reasons why people always say to start off with Chase cards first, because since Chase ends up having that 524 rule, if you're someone who wants to apply for a lot of credit cards, it's going to make the most sense to apply for Chase cards first, end up getting over that 524 with Chase cards, and then going and applying for other cards after, because you always know that you can come to those other cards afterwards easier than you can trying to get Chase cards afterwards, because Chase has that hard 524 rule. But I think that once you end up getting your credit score into the mid to high 700s or in the 800s, then honestly you can begin to apply for a lot of credit cards. I last year ended up having at one point 4 different credit cards that I was working on at the exact same time with a sign-up bonus, because there were so many awesome offers that I ended up applying for 4 cards within the course of like 5 months. Now, this isn't something that I recommend for people to do. However, for me in my situation, I knew that I could end up hitting the minimum spend for all of these cards, so that's the reason why I did it. Plus, I did not want to miss out on these elevated offers. Now, that's something that I definitely say to do if you end up seeing cards that have elevated offers, is to take advantage of them. Now, I know people ask this question because they have a fear of getting denied for credit cards. I've been denied for many credit cards, and honestly, it doesn't really affect your credit score that much. Now, it does stink to get denied. Obviously, if you apply to the credit card, you hope that you end up getting approved for it, but you end up realizing that if it doesn't affect your credit score that much, you can end up coming back to that card usually about 6 months later and then reapplying, and then you have a good chance of possibly getting approved for that card. Now, one of the tricks that I will let you know that will allow you to apply for a lot of credit cards in a shorter period of time would end up being applying for business credit cards. Now, business credit cards are going to add a hard inquiry onto your account. However, they're not going to add new lines of credit if you end up actually getting approved. So that means you can get yourself 5 business credit cards over the course of a year and then still apply for a Chase credit card and end up being approved, because it does not add a new line of credit to your personal credit history, which is absolutely awesome. This is the reason why business credit cards can end up being so lucrative, and a lot of people end up understanding how to take advantage of them, can end up racking up so many points faster than people end up just getting regular personal credit cards. So that's my tip. If you actually want to get approved for a lot of credit cards over a shorter period of time, look into getting yourself business credit cards, because it won't show in your credit history the same way personal cards will. So let's recap this. Your first year, you should end up only applying for 1 credit card, getting approved for that card, showing that you can do on-time payments and keeping your utilization low. And then after a year, you're gonna wanna get yourself another credit card, probably end up going to Chase just so you don't end up getting knocked out of Chase's 524. And then from there, you should do it about 6 months and then maybe 3 months after that. Now, again, always make sure you can end up hitting the sign-up bonus. Once you end up seeing that your credit score ends up being in the mid 700s or above, I think you can end up picking up the velocity at that point and start applying for a new credit card every 2 to 3 months. But always make sure that you can end up hitting that welcome offer, because I think it's very, very valuable. But hopefully this information was helpful. Let me know in the comment section down below, how often do you end up applying for credit cards? If you do happen to have any questions, drop those down in the comment section down below and I'll do the best I can to answer them. If you happen to really like this video, then please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and have a beautiful rest of your day. Peace.